So without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker. As I said, Saffaa, or Miss Saffaa as her Insta handle is. She's originally born and raised in Saudi Arabia, but now she resides in Australia, where she's currently pursuing her PhD. She aims to raise awareness about gender inequality in Saudi Arabia and to support the courageous women there in standing up for their rights. She advocates human rights both on social media, through campaigning, and through her street art. And I think her most famous work centers around the topic, I am my own guardian. And that is also what she will be talking about today. So Saffaa, I give it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mariam, for the introduction. I would like to start by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land from which I speak today, the Gadigal people, to the various clans who make up the kinship relationships with these lands, and also to elders past, present, and emerging. I also want to acknowledge that I am standing on colonized, stolen lands, and that the freedoms afforded to me in this country, the freedoms of being able to openly and freely practice my art, have come at the expense and ongoing suffering of its First Nation peoples, and that the legacy of colonial violence continues to exist, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Apologies, my page is not wanting to go further than this. How does one talk about the power of art in 10 minutes? Well, about 9 minutes now. It's quite the task we've been entrusted with. I'm going to start with a confession. Writing and public speaking do not come naturally to me, and they cause me great anxiety, as you can tell. When I stress about work, life, or writing speeches for that matter, I often procrastinate by making art. And that's exactly what I did 2 nights ago to avoid writing and thinking about this speech. I rummaged through all my pay stubs, and instead of writing, I started putting art on the wall behind me. In 2012, while I was in the middle of doing my honors degree, I was faced with a huge hurdle. My Saudi-sponsored scholarship was in jeopardy because I did not have my male guardian with me. I was at risk of losing my well-earned scholarship only because of my gender. I experienced immense mental and psychological pressure. I was angry, I was sad, I was frustrated, I was anxious. I wasn't eating or sleeping. I was grieving. And I eventually started feeling that I was going to fall into a deep depression. And to make matters even worse, my research paper was due in 2 months. My mental health took a hard hit. And for the first time in my life, at the age of 35, I really understood what gender-based institutional discrimination felt like. But of course, instead of trying to write my paper or trying to find pragmatic solutions for my problems, I decided I should just make art. I asked one of my Australian friends if they would model for me. My friend cheerfully agreed. I dressed up my friend in the Saudi male headdress and I started taking photos. I don't possess any photography skills, so that day I took over 300 photos with the hope that one would work. Most of the photos I took did not come out as I wanted. I went through all 300 images one by one. It took about an hour, and I almost gave up when one photograph spoke to me. When I saw the image, I experienced a pure moment of joy. True happiness, for real. I was thrilled that I could find that one image that captured how I aspired to feel. My friend was looking straight into the camera with a piercing gaze and looked fierce and powerful. And because gender oppression can have real psychological ramifications, fierce and powerful was all I wanted to be and all I wanted to feel. My art-induced happiness did make me believe in the power I had within me. When my image found its way around the world, thanks to the brave and politically savvy Saudi women who turned the I Am My Own Guardian campaign into a worldwide celebrated feminist movement, I had all kinds of reactions to it. Someone even called my act of creating that piece of art a courageous act. But it wasn't at all. It wasn't a courageous act. It was escapism and procrastination at best. It was an artwork I created to escape my problems. It was an artwork I created because I was deeply hurting. I did not create it to have a voice or make a point. I did not create it to attempt to change the world or for my art to be visible. I created it simply to make myself feel good. But in creating an artwork that healed me, I inadvertently created an artwork that had the power to heal others. And since my image going viral in 2016, I had been creating art as a form of escapism. I've been lucky enough to get paid for some of it. And although art is not pragmatic, it is in fact transformative. I found that creating art always brought me back to myself. It didn't matter if I was working in my studio or on the streets. It didn't matter if I was working on a small piece of paper or on a 20-meter wall. When I am creating, I forget for a moment what ails me and what ails the world. Art has the power to heal those who create it and those who consume it. For me, art has and will always be an act of self-love. And no matter how hard or messy life gets, when art calls, I surrender. When art calls, I always surrender. It would be an oversight not to mention that I had been lucky enough to have access to resources and institutional support, without which I would not be able to create as freely as I have been. When COVID hit last year and Sydney went into lockdown, I lost 2 major paid art projects. These 2 art projects would have been my primary source of income. Art is even more relevant when the world is collectively hurting. When disease and death dominate the news and overwhelm even the strongest among us, art has the ability to heal. I may have lost my income, but I still had my art. Art was my lifeline in times of isolation and uncertainty. In art, I found a great companion. Art has always been my calling, my purpose. So when it calls again, I will surrender, no matter what. Thank you.